Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to That Man Show. My name is Curtis Brooks. I am your host, executive coach, and men's life coach specializing in transformational leadership for men. Guys, we got another great show for you this evening. We're talking about life after divorce, soul work, why men cannot skip the inner journey. So we've got a great show. I'm excited about this conversation because I am I have been divorced. I'm married now, but I know the divorce cycle. I've been there, done that, and today I want to talk about that. And I also want to remind you, if you're just joining us, we are on obviously LinkedIn here. If you are watching us on LinkedIn, this is actually my primary stomping ground. This is kind of where I hang out here on LinkedIn, and we're sharing it out over on Facebook and also on YouTube. So you can check us out there. A lot of times people are having some difficulties finding me over on Facebook, but on on Facebook, but on YouTube, it's not, or what is it? Live coaching for men. On YouTube, it's live coaching for men. I was about to say it's not rocket science coaching, but for YouTube, it's live coaching for men. And you can use the @ symbol or the @ sign at Live Coaching for Men. You can find me over on YouTube. So make sure you are engaging with this conversation. Leave us a comment. I think systems are all go. I hear my audio here. Let's see here. Make sure I'm able to see the comments as well. All right, sure, turn it off there. So again, we're talking about life after divorce, soul work, why men cannot skip the inner journey. Now, we know that divorce is not just it's more than just a legal process. It is a catastrophic event that takes place, not only from a legal perspective or even the physical things that we go through, but spiritually as well. So we're going to dive into that as well, because we're going to make spiritual sense of this, because in reality, when we're divorcing something or divorcing from our mate, soulmate, the likes thereof, there's a lot of different things that are going on. So it's more than just the legal process. In fact, it can feel like an earthquake has happened emotionally, not only just physically, and just the nature of something that is so huge. It takes a toll on us spiritually, emotionally. So there's definitely going to be an aftermath. There's going to be some aftershocks. There's going to be some things that we need to clean up, some things that we need to tune into. But divorce will set us on that path, because again, there's a lot of things that takes place within a marriage. And like I said, I've been there. I've divorced myself in the past, actually a couple of times, if I'm honest with you. And so I do know something about this subject, something about this matter. And I want to say this before we kind of dive into our conversation. I want to encourage other men who are so bold enough to, and even courageous enough to have these conversations. I know I'm not the only one that have these conversations that, again, perhaps your show is not That Man Show, but we need to have these conversations, gentlemen, and that is really the premises of this show, is that there's a space for us to have these conversations. There's a space for us to engage, even for women to engage, so they can know more about us and what we're dealing with, and so that we can even learn more about what women are dealing with. So somewhere in the future, I will be having guests on the show. So if you decide that you want to be a guest, please hit me up through the DMs here on LinkedIn, or you maybe on Facebook or YouTube. You can drop us a message on YouTube and just letting us know that you want to be a guest, and reach out to me, and I will definitely get back to you, and we can discuss that further. But I would love the banter, just kind of going back and forth and having those conversations, because these conversations are important. As my show card says, it is a big deal. It absolutely is a big deal. Not just the conversation about divorce, but just conversations about us as men. It is absolutely a big deal, guys. And I think that if we as men, if we make us a big deal, not in a sense of ego, that's not what I'm talking about, but if we make our needs a big deal in regards to being able to share our emotions and things of that nature. And does not mean, I'm not saying that we're going to come on screen and just bearing our souls. That's not what I mean. But even to one another in private conversations that we might have with another gentleman or a friend that we can trust, we need to have these conversations, gentlemen. We really do, because I think I know when the Father heals, when the Son heals. Last week I had a conversation and talked about, I can't remember the title of the conversation, but last week we had a conversation. I talked about sons, or the week before I talked about sons from a spiritual perspective. Sons are ideally immature. They're doing foolish things. Things that just doesn't make sense to naturally, but they're caught up in that space. They're doing foolish things as sons. But when we become fathers, this is from a spiritual perspective. Now, when we become fathers, fathers are more mature. And it does not mean or designate that fathers know everything. That's not what I'm saying. But fathers are more likely to say, hey, you know what? I wasn't sure about that, so let me go back and correct this. Let me look at myself. Let me do some self-reflection. So you're more apt to get this nature, this new nature that where men will do the work. There's more of that self-reflection, more journaling, and just talking out loud, being able to share their feelings and their thoughts and things of that nature. So these conversations will ideally come from fathers. And this is from a spiritual perspective. And I think this is one of the reasons why it keeps us as men from having these conversations or sharing our thoughts, and just feeling that we cannot talk or we cannot get these things off our chest. But in this conversation, we're going to dive more into that. But here's some interesting stats, and I want to share this with you before we dive more into the conversation. Interesting stat that, as I was doing doing some research, is that this comes from modernfamilylaw.com, and these are some stats, and these are U.S. stats here. So they don't include international stats, but stats for divorce in U.S. So it says that ideally the first marriage, a person's first time getting married, they're looking at anywhere from 40 to 50% of a divorce rate. So that means that if it is your first marriage, the chances are that you will be getting a divorce is in the areas of 40 to 50%. And I'm reading these because I think not only are these interesting stats, but they're stats that we absolutely need to know. And so it goes on to say that ideally a marriage will last about 8 years. This is just kind of on average. And it says, I'll give a couple more stats here, and it says the second marriage, the chances or the percentages are absolutely higher. So you're looking at anywhere from 60% to 67% of marriages will end in divorce on the second marriage. Now on the third marriage, obviously they're higher. So you're looking at 70% and above on the third marriage. Now, it does not say the fourth marriage and the fifth marriage, but it does give stats just for the first, second, and the third marriage. Now, it even gives stats for the what they call a gray divorce, and these are people who are over 50. So ideally, what I was sharing with you before are people who are under 50, but they're saying that people who are over 50, the divorce rates are even are going higher. So they're seeing more of those divorces for people who are over 50, as opposed in years before, when people who are around the age of 50 years old and above, you didn't see as many divorces. People weren't getting divorced. They were hanging out and going through the tough times as well as the good times, and learning how to be there for each other. And I think that one of the challenges that we face, and as we are talking about this subject, is the inner work. The inner journey. And I know you will probably, some of you may have actually get exhausted with me talking about this inner work. And I want to just really kind of I'm going to stand my ground on this, because it is absolutely a huge piece for all of us as people, men and women alike. And a lot of times for us as men, we don't like to talk about this stuff here. And it can, we can find ourselves just just wanting to go on to the next thing. Okay, we've got divorced. It did not work out. And let me go to the gym. Let me find something to do to keep myself busy. And that in itself is really the beginning of the problem. And I say that with all my heart, that is truly the beginning of the problem, because unless we're willing to fix what's broken and to analyze, because if we are looking, let's just say hypothetically, a person is a leader on a job, or you doesn't have to be a manager, but a person has a particular job, maybe an analyst, or just doing some self-reflection. Let's just say a person is on their job and they're led with the task of analyzing the company's business affairs and things of that nature. And if we can understand the importance of analyzing a person or an individual, analyzing their affairs of business, analyzing the affairs of just their day-to-day business, and how important that is to a business, how much more important is that going to be to us as individuals? Being able to monitor our affairs, being able to sit down for a moment and do some self-reflection, do some journaling. And I think that is one of the biggest problems for us as men, is that we seldom do this self-reflection. We want to go to the gym and work it out and just say, forget about it, and toss life behind us and say it's going to fix itself. And ideally, it does not fix itself. And in most cases, it gets worse. And that is just the way it is, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen who are listening. So if you just joined us, we're talking about life after divorce, soul work, why men can't skip the inner journey. So it is important for us to do that self-reflection. It is important for us to do some journaling. It is important for us to get these things off of our chest, because ideally what's attached to what's attached to us as men, where we're not ready to dive in, or at least find out what's happening on a deeper level, is that it starts from home. And you'll hear me say that 1,001 times. I will stand 10 toes down on that, because I believe that different things that show up in our lives, and they don't just haphazardly show up. They have a beginning. And in most cases, that beginning is from our family. And I've shared some of the situations for me growing up. My mother, I love her. She was loud and boisterous. And here I am, loud and boisterous, and learning how to tone that down. So myself, I'm still learning. And I just want to put that out there. And so there's no one person who has all the answers. And I think that we can absolutely glean from each other in regards to what changes we need to make. We don't need to be jealous of each other on any level, but look at one person from another person to the next person and how they may be doing something. They might be doing it better than you. They might have a better idea, a better method on how to get through something. And it does not mean that what I'm saying to you is the gospel. Someone else might have something different and a better way of looking at things. And if that works for you, that works for you. But you have to find something to release this pressure, ladies and gentlemen. And obviously, gentlemen, as we're talking with men taking this journey, we have to be prepared to release the pressure that we're under, and get down to the nuts and bolts of what's happening. And all too often that is to our demise, I should say. Apologize for that. So that cripples us, and I believe that is one of the reasons why divorce rate is so high, and it does not exclude my situation. Absolutely not. It does not exclude my situation. I married not so well. I would probably say young. Yeah, I was probably in my early 20s, and I thought that was the best thing for me. And as I look back, in ways I just think I wanted an outlet for the stuff that I was dealing with, it, maybe even at home and just in life. And I wanted an outlet. I wanted a safe place, and only to find out that safe place that I was looking for, I had to be that safe place first. And I think for us as men, we have a tendency to put a lot of that safe place that we're looking for, a lot of the burden, a lot of our challenges on our significant others, on our spouses, our significant other, on our girlfriends, whatever, long-term relationships. we end up putting a lot of burden on our spouses. And the reality of it is that they're not made to handle it. And I'm just going to put it out there. They're not made to handle the challenges that we as men, a lot of men face, and there are some major challenges. And again, from one man to another man, we're going obviously going to be going through something different and deal with things differently. And I get that our upbringings are completely different, and that doesn't necessarily that doesn't necessarily pose a challenge necessarily in regards to just our upbringings are so different, because it still remains to be a burden for many of us, having to get through those challenges, having to get through the things that we're dealing with. And again, in most cases, it's the family dynamics that we're having to get through, that we're having to make sense of, to wrap our minds around it. Because if a man did not feel like he was loved by his mother, and again, it's not to say that mom did it intentionally. Perhaps mom didn't feel like she was loved. Again, this is this cycle that goes on and on. So it didn't just pop out of thin air. It was it had a beginning. It had a beginning, and life has a way of just applying pressure to all of us. It has a way of applying pressure to all of us, and with that, we can find ourselves doing some ridiculous things under that pressure, and not dealing with the past hurts. That's another major reason why we as men need to take this journey, because we haven't dealt with the past hurts. And this is why I believe divorce, one of the many reasons, again, not necessarily the sole reason that the divorce rates are so high, but I do believe that men have we have a larger burden to carry, and this is from a spiritual perspective, and that's just my take on it. I believe that men have a larger burden to take on, and we have not always known that responsibility. We have not always understood that, and because we have not understood that, there's been a lot of things that have just been dismissed. There are a lot of things that we've allowed to happen, to take hold. There are a lot of conversations that we should not have had. There are a lot of different things that we've said from a hurt place. And ideally, if we have not been raised by fathers who understand this on a more deeper level, and so much of this conversation, or these conversations about divorce and just the things that take place in life, are so much more spiritual than we absolutely understand. Things are not always just black and white, ladies and gentlemen. That is just the way it is. Things are just not always black and white. Some things, life uses symbols and different analogies and just different things that will just provoke us to thought. And we, just, you can see I'm having a tough time to explain this as well, but life is so much more than just black and white. And I think this is just what we've been told, that you just do this, you just do this. You go to school, you get a good job, you make good money, you can find a good woman. And that's not always the case. And we as men, we're looking for women, I think, in all the wrong places. And I think a lot of times finding the right woman comes from, or at least when we're making those connections with what we deem or who we deem as the right woman, it's from those toxic places. It's those places that we're already, perhaps the family dynamics that we've been dealing with that are already there. And it can appear that those things are lying dormant. And I think what we do a lot of times as men, we will take it upon ourselves to find ourselves working out at a gym. So absolutely, there's nothing wrong with working out at the gym. There's nothing wrong with our careers. You're in that spectrum. But it is important to know that we as men, oftentimes, what we will do, we will shove one thing to the side or place it behind us. And then truly, it is, in fact, the elephant in the room, but we'll ignore it for all intents and purposes and find ourselves just doing these extensive and just working ourselves to the bone either with our careers or just overworking ourselves in the gym, finding ourselves getting involved with different substances, substance abuse, be it alcohol, be it drugs, sex as well. Women find ourselves having multiple partners. And the reality of it is that that doesn't fix anything. Those things are just temporary. And it ends up being the soul work that needs to be done. It's the soul work that needs to be done. And for a lot of us as men, this can be foreign because we've been told that life is kind of black and white, or at least we can look at life as it is black and white. And we've been told, hey, we don't talk about those things. We don't have these kind of conversations. And perhaps no one has said that to us verbally, but we know that in certain places for us as men, these conversations are just not had. We don't have these conversations. So as we dive deeper into this here, we're looking at why this topic is so important. As I kind of alluded to earlier, this topic is important because we need men who are healed. We need men who are healed. Men who are healed make better decisions, guys. Men who are healed are better leaders. And I want to share this with you in terms of the word divorce. The word divorce essentially means to separate something. It means to separate something, and be it something is separated against its will, or something is separated voluntarily or involuntarily, but it essentially means to separate something. And so what happens on a spiritual level, this separation it's a covenant. Marriage is a covenant. And the very words that we speak are covenant. And many people don't understand this. And again, life as we know it, some of us may know it, we see life as black and white, but it's not always black and white, folks. There's so much more to life than just putting the round ball into the round hole, or the square peg into the square hole. There's so much more to life than just looking at life as black and white. So what happens in divorce, again, the word divorce means to separate, to pull apart, whether voluntary or involuntarily. And because words are covenants, words, when I say covenants, meaning words cover, words protect us, words hide us, words give us understanding. And again, covenant to keep safe, covenant coming in an agreement. And so when we marry someone, when individuals are married, they are actually coming together in agreement. They're coming together in agreement in the eyes of God. And when I'm having this conversation with you, it is not to condemn anyone. As I mentioned earlier, if you were with me at the beginning of the show, I too have been divorced. I now remarried since, but I have also been divorced. So this message is definitely not to condemn anyone. Hopefully you hear the compassion and the understanding coming off my voice and the tone that I'm sharing this with you. But divorce means to separate. And when we marry someone, an individual marries someone, there is a covenant that is created. In a sense, how a woman is no longer a virgin. There is the hymen is broken, and there's like a covenant. Something is broken, and so now with two people coming together in marriage, there's a covenant that is created by way of their words. And when that covenant is created, it creates a bind. Something is binding like a legal agreement. The words are legal, ladies and gentlemen. And when we don't understand the legal ramifications of our words, not necessarily just in the court of law, or a person going before a divorce judge or their attorneys, not so much in just that, yes, they are legal in that sense, but they're legal in the realm of the spiritual spaces, the spiritual world. Words are absolutely legal and they carry weight. And so what happens when people are divorced in a marriage, again, a marriage being a covenant, our very words are a covenant. And when they're divorced, there's a ripping, there's something that's being torn, because initially these two people have come together as a something that's being bound, something that's been interwoven by their words, something that's been interwoven by an agreement. And now this agreement is no longer in effect. There is now, as I mentioned moments ago, there is a tearing. And so not only is there a tearing spiritually, there's a tearing on the inside of us. Not only for women. Yes, I know women go through a lot of different things as they've been divorced financially, mentally, emotionally, but I promise you, us men are dealing with the same thing. Perhaps, again, our stories are different. I get that as well. But us men are dealing with the same thing. This is not a plea to say, whoa, us men are hurting too. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the word divorce is to tear apart. And when we come together in marriage, people come together in a marriage, the very words to marry someone is to come together as one unit. Coming together as one, two people to come together as one. And when the covenant is broken by way of perhaps an abusive marriage, covenant can be broken by way of the spouse cheating, be it man or woman. We're not here to condemn men. We're not here to condemn women, but your spouse cheats. That can, biblically, that is ground for that is grounds for divorce, because there is a tearing, there is a faithfulness that was created in the likes of two people having a conversation and beginning the time they're courting, they're dating. There was a commitment that was made by way of words. The words bound them together. And when separation happens by way of the definition of the word divorce, when that separation takes place, again, voluntarily or involuntarily, even if people are saying, hey, it was mutual, it does not do away with the fact that it is a spiritual thing that's taken place, ladies and gentlemen. It is still spiritual matters that are taking place. And you don't just toss the spiritual things in the garbage and say, hey, oh, this didn't happen just because you don't understand them. Or just because you don't believe in God does not mean God does not exist. And this is what we are dealing with as men who are prepared to do the soul work and who are taking this inner journey. The inner journey means that you've got to do the work, gentlemen. And I think this is this is one of the factors, the reasons why we are dealing with divorce on such a high rate, because again, if I could just be honest with you and share of my own situation, I have learned so much. I mentioned earlier, this is my third marriage. This is my third marriage, and doesn't necessarily say, and I say this doesn't mean that I'm not saying this in a way that I'm so proud. Oh, this is my third. No, absolutely not. I wish I would have known what I know now, but I didn't. So I'm not here to condemn you or anyone else or any women or men. That's not what I'm here for. That's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is about healing men. And when the men heal, as I mentioned earlier, these are spiritual matters now. Whether you want to admit, whether you care about these conversations or not, does not mean that they don't exist, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you may not want to hear this. That's okay. But it does not mean that it does not exist. So when we're dealing with these spiritual matters, they're happening on such a deep level, on a subconscious level, that our minds don't comprehend. And as I mentioned earlier, words themselves are covenants. They are agreements. There was a time where a man could shake another man's hand, and that would be his word. A man could give you his word by a handshake, looking you in your eye and giving you a handshake. And he would show up at the appointment. He would sign the document. You had his word. There was a time, but those times are long gone now. We can't trust men. And when I say men, I'm meaning the humanity. We can't trust people as far as we can throw them. I hate to say that, but it's the reality. Because when people are under pressure, a lot of times when people are under pressure, you have their representative that shows up. And the healing piece is so important, meaning that the reason why we cannot skip this journey, this inner journey, this work that needs to be done, is because we are then capable of healing our families. Some of us have blended families. Some of us have where families are not blended, we have our biological children. I have a blended family. And I'm sure there are other men who have blended families as well. But the point I'm making is that when the men heal, and I know this conversation for a lot of us as men is taboo as well. We don't like to talk about these things, but we got to get used to it. We got to get used to having these conversations, gentlemen, so that we can heal our families. Because rest assured, again, these spiritual matters are working underneath it, underneath the very fabric of things that we just cannot see. And just because you don't see them does not mean they don't exist. I'm going to keep nailing that to the wall, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to keep nailing that to the wall. Just because you don't see it, just because you don't believe it, just because you have 99 different reasons for why it does not exist, just because you are a lot more intelligent than I am, does not mean it does not exist. Just because you can frame your argument better than I can or better than the next person, does not mean it does not exist. And I think that it is absolutely important for us to get this as men, as leaders of our household. It is absolutely important for us to understand this. So we just have to put this in perspective. It is absolutely a must that we put this in perspective. One of the key things for us as men is that understanding that you cannot lead someone from the rear, from the back. You cannot lead someone or lead your household, and I'm not even talking about, when I say leadership, I'm not even talking about leading a business. This is well before you're leading a business, because I believe that if a man can lead himself out of the turmoil, the challenges that he has gone through in life and things that have been presented to him, I believe if a man can play the cards that have been dealt him, and he can lead himself out of the challenges that we all face on different levels, big, small, or indifferent. If a man can lead himself out of that, he can absolutely lead an organization. So I'm not even talking about leading an organization, gentlemen. I'm talking about leading yourself out of the situation so that we're not in this perpetual breaking up in relationships, speaking words and not being able to uphold our end of the bargain. And I'm going to put it out here. I'm going to jump out on a limb. It is by nature, a lot of times that we're dealing with women who will divorce for some of the smallest reasons. And I know from just experience, and I'm not speaking for every man, but for most of us as men, we're very loyal. We're very loyal. And again, I'm not saying that all men are loyal, but I'm just saying the nature of men is loyal. We cherish loyalty. So when men are not loyal, 9 times out of 10, I'll even bet on this, 99.9% of the time, something has happened. Something has happened from the family dynamic that would challenge that has challenged that loyalty. Again, from the family dynamics. If the son has seen his dad, I'll say dad in place of father, if the son has seen his dad not be loyal, where he's cheated on his mother, or it's not just about cheating, or dad doesn't follow through with what he said he was going to do. Dad doesn't keep his word, because remember what I said, words are covenants, words are agreements. And especially in the eyes of children, my baby girl will ask me, daddy, 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 and every parent that has a child, you may have experienced this. How your child will say your name over and over, and especially if you've promised them something. You've given your word on something that you're going to get them ice cream, you're going to get them a snack, you're going to get them a toy or that latest game or an Xbox or whatever the case might be. We know that our children as parents, they're absolutely going to hold us to the very words that were spoken. So whether an individual is married or not, words are covenants, words are agreements. And even to our children, they understand that. And so this loyalty, as I stated earlier, that is common with us as men, it shows up not only through, it shows up not only through our marriage, but it shows up in how we deal with our children. That if we give our child our word, we're going to show up and do what we said we're going to do. Loyalty. Now, on the flip side of that, and I've got the text to prove it. I want to encourage you to check it out. But in the Bible, Apostle Paul talks about the woman being the weaker vessel. Does not mean that she was incapable of doing certain jobs and things of that nature, being a president, perhaps, being a CEO or running several businesses. Does not mean that she's not capable. But the weaker vessel, meaning that she had submitted. She submitted under the pressure. She had fallen under the pressure of the very thing that God told her not to do. And the Bible says that she did then had given the fruit unto her husband to eat. And after he had eaten the fruit, all of mankind had fallen. And the reason why, I believe, all mankind have fallen, not only because of the woman had eaten the fruit, but that after Adam had eaten the fruit, all of mankind had fallen because he carried the seed. He is the foundation. So it wasn't until after Adam had eaten of the fruit, mankind had fallen. And subsequently, after the fall, and I want to say this, obviously God does not hate women or anything like that, and I don't hate women, and this is not about bashing women, but a feminine nature that Eve had taken upon initially and then given some to her husband, that feminine nature has begun to rule the world. That feminine nature, under the guise of that feminine nature, deceit, the manipulation, and a host of other different things that take place that or have taken place after the fall. The Bible says that they covered themselves up because they recognized they were naked. Perhaps not physical naked, but spiritually naked. Perhaps. I don't know. I wasn't there. But the point I'm making is that because of this, because when men have not taken their rightful place, and Adam had an opportunity to take his rightful place and say, woman, no, we're not eating this fruit, or whatever he could have said. Could have said anything, but he didn't. He blamed the woman instead. Then she then blamed the serpent. And perhaps that is what we're dealing with right now, the blame game. That the men don't want to take responsibility for their rightful position. And I say rightful position because the Bible speaks of that. Because it says Adam was made first. There was a position that he was relegated to. He didn't uphold it, but nevertheless, there was a position he was relegated to. The Bible also says that Eve would desire her husband and he would rule over her. That's interesting. I found that very interesting because Eve had been, both of them, Adam and Eve have now been both riddled with this manipulation, this perception, this perceiving that the fruit was good to eat and things of that nature. They're both dealing with this now. All right. Well before their children have been born. So they've both been dealing with this now. They've covered themselves up. And the Bible says, as I mentioned moments ago, Eve would desire her husband and her husband would rule over her. Now, Adam is still in position. Just because he had eaten of the fruit, the Bible says that Adam was not deceived. I'm sharing this with you, not to give you a Bible story, but to give you understanding that this is the nature of what we're dealing with. I believe this in all my heart. This is the nature of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who can understand, because, and I'm going to put this out here. If we can understand the organization of a company, knowing that there's a CEO, there's a COO, there's a CFO, and there's a CMO, a marketing officer. If we can understand these many different levels that take place within an organization, and that the word organize in itself means to organize, means to put something together, put the oranges with the oranges and the apples with the apples, obviously on a basic level. But the point of it is, if we can understand on a simple level that analogy, the oranges here, the apples here, the bananas over here, if we can understand that, we can understand the importance of organization within the very companies that we may be working for. Now, why is it that we can't understand that marriage in itself? And there are a lot of people say marriage is organized. It is organized. It has to be organized. It absolutely has to be organized. The nature of the woman. There's the nature of the man. And when we understand each of their natures, we can organize things. We can have a hierarchy, so to speak. It's important. It's important. And without this understanding, things just get absolutely chaotic. And it is important for us as men to take our place under the guise of this information. I am not trying to push anything on you, But I found for me personally that this is a roadmap that I want to follow. I think the Bible is the best book on psychology ever written. I think the Bible in itself gives us a glimpse of who we are. It shows us our frailties. And oftentimes, I think the challenge with us as men, we don't want to look at those frailties. We don't want to look at the man in the mirror. And because the man does not want to look at himself in the mirror, he continues to be unfit for real, authentic relationships. And it doesn't mean that it's just about marriage, but just relationships, be it with your co-workers, be it with if you're a leader in your job, be it with your subordinates, be it with other leaders. When a man does not understand the importance of a hierarchy, so to speak, he will trample over those who are in place for certain reasons. He will destroy an organization because he himself has not been under any kind of authority, because he doesn't understand. And when he doesn't understand authority, he absolutely cannot understand the organization. Understand it in its sense, the word organized by its definition, perhaps. But he doesn't understand the importance of organization and the importance of the authority that comes when things are organized. And there's a reason why we call, or we give the title to people, different organizations, leaders, because they're leading the organization. And when we as men have not defined our role, we are dismissive to any kind of leadership. And consequently, the women are as well. And I think is also indicative of a woman being not able to submit, not only to her husband, but to submit to the understanding of how this organization works, how marriage, as people would say, oh, marriage is organized. You're right. It's absolutely organized. It has to be organized. Any kind of relationship has to be organized. Everyone does not come in with the same skill set, the same understanding. My wife is better at certain things than I am. I'm better at certain things than she is. And there are times when we equally have a certain amount of understanding and we have to come to some kind of consensus. But if not, we could end up devouring each other because of the ego that comes with us as men and women at times. So it is important for us to understand that though marriage be organized, it's organized for a reason. And it's because we oftentimes as men and women, especially for us as men, we don't understand the importance of the organization. We don't understand the authority within the marriage. And I again believe that this comes from the dynamics of our families. If our fathers, our dads have shown up in a sense of they didn't understand it, where they were abusive, they were maybe abusive or dismissive, Doesn't mean that every man is abusive. That's not what I'm saying. But if a man was dismissive in his relationship, or he was not a participating father, or played a participating role in his household, maybe coming home and believing that he worked all day and fixed dinner, and or the woman fixes dinner, or the wife fixes dinner, and he can sit on the couch and watch TV. What kind of son is going to be the offspring of that? Ideally, like his father. So it's important for us to understand that most of what we're dealing with comes from the dynamics of our families. And I want to take this up another notch. And I think that not only I think we can, a lot of times we're looking at the symptoms of what takes place within the dynamics of our families, and that now when we become adults, we still play these dynamics out because they're so integrated or so woven, have become so much a part of who we are, good, bad, or indifferent. And this ends up becoming the dynamic that plays itself within our marriage. It plays itself within our relationships as a whole. Okay. Wow, I didn't even see the comments there. This thing here. Yeah, Marcia says here, guys, if you see me looking away from my screen here, I'm looking at the comments here. So I do apologize, Marcia. You shared this comment a little while ago, so I apologize. I didn't see it here. So Marcia says, oh boy, the D word. Yeah, the D word. Yes, absolutely. When you say men are okay, Marcia, if you're still there, can you clarify that comment? I don't quite understand that. When you say men are, what do you mean? Can you clarify that for me, please? Let's see. Blessings, exceptional. She says, hello, everyone. Hey, blessings. Thank you for joining. And thank you for joining, Marcia. Thank you, Lenora. That is the queen bee there. My wife, Lenora. Thank you for joining, babe. So, interesting. So Marcia goes on to say, I guess she's speaking to Lenora. She says, think about it. It was loyal. Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you, Marcia, for clarifying that. So I'll get to that in just one moment here. So Marcia says unto Lenora, think about it. It was her given any instructions throughout the Bible. It was written to address men mostly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree with that anymore. That is a powerful, yeah, and I think that that's a lot there, Marcia, in Lenora. That's a lot there. Marcia says, what do you mean when you say men are loyal? Yeah, so what I mean by that, Marcia, when I say men are loyal, I say by nature we're loyal, and this is just who we are, and we that loyalty comes in with being territorial of our spouse or our significant other, long-term relationship. We're loyal to our spouse, and as I said earlier, when we are not loyal, we know that something has been defective along the way, and perhaps loyalty comes in the way of our fathers keeping their commitments, our fathers keeping their words, perhaps even let's say if if a son's father has cheated in a relationship, he has a infidelity situation. All of these things play a factor into loyalty, and I think sometimes as men, we will. Now it is statistically proven that women will divorce before man does. men are ideally loyal, and that's just our makeup. And you may have heard that women are ideally hypergamous. They will, and again, this is not saying all women, but I think that what's been missing overall, and for men and women alike, is that the fathers have not stood up to take their rightful places. The fathers have not stood up to take their rightful places. Absolutely. Marcia says over on LinkedIn, she says, our words should be our bond to our family, even in our work environment and to society. Absolutely. I don't know if you were on the live here that I'm doing, when I said that there used to be a time where a man could give his word, shake his hand, shake a person's hand, and that was his word. And so I absolutely agree with you, Marcia, in that that comment there. There was a time, and the word in itself is a covenant. The words that we speak, they're binding. As Marcia says, they're binding, and when we don't follow up and keep our word, again, here's that loyalty, that word loyalty. When we don't follow up and keep our word, we are not loyal. Not again, loyalty does not necessarily constitute in a way of just being married in a marriage, but loyal to, as Marcia said, loyal to your word. Loyal to your word. I'm going to keep my word, not only in our families, but as Marcia says, not only in our families, but also within the workplace, also within society. And this is what is hugely missing. And man does not understand the power of words. And so what happens on a spiritual level is that the very words come back to judge us. I believe that because the man does not complete what he says that he's going to do, he ends up having all these different loose ends that are all over the place. And I think there is, I believe, just from my own experience, I believe that it can be tied to depression. Absolutely. I believe they can be tied to depression because man has not kept his word. He has put out so many different things. He has not followed up with them. He has not been a man of his word. And in the end, there are all these loose ends, these loose pieces, these covenants and agreements that he has not kept. And consequently, the very words that he's put out there, they come back to judge him. They come back to judge him. They come back to, interesting enough, again, more on a spiritual note, because this is a lot more spiritual than we care to understand. But the word, there's a scripture in the Bible that says the word is alive. It is alive and is active. And much like a seed, when a seed is planted into the ground, if you're growing fruit or vegetables, or if you want to grow flower, of some kind of plant or whatever, shrubs or whatever, when you place this seed in the ground, eventually you take care of it, you water it enough, you obviously have it, the seed placed in a proper environment, the seed will grow. And naturally, it's the same way with our words. I know it can be a big thing or huge for us to kind of wrap our minds around it, but words, in fact, are seeds. Because words are seeds, when we put them out there, they grow. They will manifest themselves into whatever we have, maybe at some point we become fearful of something. And the reason why we become fearful of something, because we can have those thoughts roaming around our head, confirming themselves over and over, validating themselves, whether they're true or not. The word in itself will manifest itself. It will come about. And whether it's true or not, we see it. An individual sees it for themselves to be true. And this is because the word has to the word will grow and become that which seed that you planted. So if a person is planting hate or disdain for their mate in a marriage, or a friend, or just again, the list goes on and on. It can be a numerous of different things, but because of the seed that we sow, the seeds, the words that we speak, they go somewhere. They're going to grow and they're going to come up, and eventually, when we find ourselves trying to divorce the very thing that we have planted out there, not talking about marriage now, but I'm talking about in the terms of the word divorce. I mean, what I shared with you earlier, the word divorce means to separate something. It means to separate something. So when we share different thoughts and different words, tasks that we want to do, things we want to accomplish, we find ourselves not accomplishing these things. We find ourselves not completing certain things. We find ourselves giving our word and not following through, not being a man or woman of our word. Just because we decide to divorce that word, to separate ourselves, or decide that we change our mind on something, does not mean that that thing does not stop growing. That thing will continue to grow. It will continue to build on itself. So it's important for us to understand that. It's important for us to understand that. Now, we've talked a lot about the inner person. We've talked a lot about the word divorce. We talked a lot about spiritual matters. Let's now get into some help that we need, some help that we all need. So the first thing I want to talk about, us as men, we need to be prepared to face that fear. We need to be prepared to offload these things in a safe place. And I know a lot of times us as men, we say we've said, and I said myself, that we don't have anyone to talk to. And I've said these statements some years ago. But what I found for me is that, one, my relationship with God, that's first and foremost. He has become my sounding board. I'm able to talk with my wife about certain things. As I mentioned earlier, there are certain things that, and it's just the way it is, guys. It's just the way it is. Certain things that we as men, loads that we're carrying, that I don't think that is meant for our wives. It's not meant for our wives. And there are certain conversations obviously we can have, but there's a load that we're carrying, and we need to be able to offload that information with another man. So, and what I mean by that, because though our wife is our spouse, being our wife, or in a long-term relationship, your significant other, these things are all true. There's something about, how do I say this? There's something about how when a man presents himself less than appearing, not that he is less than, but when he wants to take off his armor, there's something about taking off that armor in a proper manner, or in a person in front of another man, because we get it in most cases. We get it. But it's something about offloading that armor in front of his wife. And hopefully you understand, those who are listening, that you understand what I'm saying. Obviously, it doesn't mean that husband and wives can't be best friends and share certain things with each other. But there's a load that we carry as men that women don't carry. Interesting enough, I look at my baby girl as she is growing, and just a beautiful baby. I love my baby girl, but I look at her because she is so just daddy, 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 and I'm at her beck and call, and in a good way, I think, but it's interesting because she knows that she's loved. She knows that she's loved. She walks around the house like she owns the house, a 2-year-old. She knows that she's loved. And there's a freedom that she has that she's able to express herself. And I say in my time with God, God, don't take this freedom away from her. And not to say that God would ever take that freedom away from us, from her, or not to say that God has taken the freedom away from us. But something has happened along the way. We've met people and relationships that have hurt us, that have wounded us. And consequently, we find ourselves needing to be fixed. But we first have to recognize that something is broken. We first have to recognize something is broken. All too often, we as men want to just almost ignore the relationship that we just got out of. And I know that's not the case. But we can find ourselves doing an extra 10, 30 reps or something like that, trying to just overextend ourselves within our jobs or at the gym, overextending ourselves at the gym, overextending ourselves in our career, overextending ourselves in new relationships, trying to overcompensate for the pain that we're feeling or that we may have caused in a previous relationship. And through this overcompensation, we can find ourselves in a worse situation than we were before because we're not being healed or being easily triggered in a new relationship when it's just not time to start a new relationship. Some of us as men have some deep wounds, guys. Some of us men have deep wounds. Until those wounds are addressed, we can forever find ourselves being in a perpetual space of, oh, it was her. It was the woman. It was the woman. It was the woman. When in fact, that when God put us as men in position, He never changed His mind. He never changed His mind. Now we as men have become one of the same spirit, the spirit of manipulation, the spirit of deceit, the same fruit which Eve had eaten of. Adam was also affected by it. All of humanity was affected by the act of disobedience. There are some things that we just know to do. This is just innately. And when we don't do them, there's a fallout that takes place. There's a door that's open. Just as words are covenants, as I mentioned earlier, just as words are covenants, coverings, protection, words also open doors that once were closed. So when we are not healed as men, by way of the conversation, by way of the dialogue, by way of the shame and the grief that's taken place on the inside, being affected mentally and emotionally, when we're not healed, it is the same as open doors. It is the same as that we end up become a product. Potentially, we can end up becoming a product of the very thing that's been spoken. Because remember, the words are seeds. The very words that we speak are seeds. They will manifest themselves, if not from a physical space, a mental space. They will begin to shape themselves in the minds of us as fathers, sons. So it becomes absolutely important for us to heal, let go of the burden that we've been trying to carry. Let go of perfection. Let go of our ability to, or at least in our own minds, believing that we are right and they're wrong. Being prepared to seek out help. First, admitting that something's not right. Asking ourselves the tough questions. What happened to Curtis? Now, you fill in the blank for your own name, but what happened to blank? What happened to me? What happened to my joy? Where did it go? Who stole my joy? Because I guarantee you, in most cases, it wasn't the marriage that stole your joy. As I stated earlier, there's ideally a family dynamic that takes place well before either one of us decide to say I do. There's a family dynamic that takes place. And I know no family is perfect. So coming out from our families, I believe that's where a lot of this stuff starts. The stuff that we haven't dealt with, the things that need to be fixed within our own psyche. Now, until we are prepared to work on those things, we can find ourselves in a cycle of failed relationships. And ideally, these relationships don't get any better. They get worse. Because the people that we meet, we will, in our own mind, think they're so bad. Oh, it was her. And I'm talking about men. Because we have a position to take. Getting back to loyalty. Getting back to speaking our word and following up with what we said we were going to do. Getting back to being men of our word. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. There are times when me and my wife have disagreements. Naturally, we all, no marriage is perfect. But there are times when we have disagreements, but I still got to follow through what I'm supposed to be doing. Because it is known that women are more emotional than men are. And there are some men who are just as emotional. But again, when men are not healed, men are emotional as women. Men respond like women within their emotions when they're not healed. So through the course of years, I absolutely have had to heal myself. So I'm sharing this with you, not because I have nothing else to do. I'm sharing this because I want to see us as men healed. I want to see us heal our families, heal our wives, heal our children. So when men aren't healed, we'll find ourselves going back and forth over petty stuff. And it's not to say, when I say this, I apologize, not to mean that the conversations that people are having are insignificant. That's not what I mean. But at some point, someone has to be the adult. Someone has to be wise enough to the walls have to be fortified. I'll put it that way. And I think for us as men, we have the capability of being emotionally fortified. And there's a scripture, as we wrap it up here, we are kind of getting short on time here. But there's a scripture that says, and some of you may have heard it before, there's a scripture that says, husband, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And wives are to respect their wives, or excuse me, wives are to respect their husbands. Apologize for that. And it's interesting because I thought about that. And I thought about it, and I thought about it. And I said, well, wait a minute. It doesn't talk about women to love their husbands. Because us men, we're not wired that way. Probably some years ago, maybe a year or two ago, I told my wife, yeah, just respect. That's it. That's it. That's what works for me is respect. The mushy feely stuff, yeah, she gets into that. And that's okay because that's how women are wired. But there's something about when the man loves his wife, he develops a temperance. He's tempered in his emotions because he understands that there is a difference. My wife deals with things different than I deal with them. So as a husband, and I'm speaking in general for us as men, for us as men, sons who become fathers in the spiritual perspective. So at some point, us husband and fathers, there's a father hat and there's a husband hat. But for the father who's speaking to his wife, and I'll say that like that, for the man who's speaking from a perspective as a father, and even unto his wife, he learns how to come with love. He comes with love. He comes tempered in his emotions. And it's not to say that I'm that way all the time. That's not what I'm saying. No one person has all the answers. But as I mentioned earlier, for the father, for the sons who become fathers, and there's this absolute stark difference. And our fatherhood, there are things that we just don't do. We're prepared to take on the challenge and say, oh, I dropped the ball on this day. I should not have said that way. I can go back to my wife and apologize. You can go back to your significant other, apologize. That's what fathers do. Sons, on the other hand, again, there's stark differences. But fathers get it. Fathers get it. There's absolutely going to take us as men to reach out to someone who can help us. And as I've shared with you for more than an hour now, I can do just that. You can look on the screen there. There is my link to connect with me. That is going to be bit.ly/free 30-minute coaching. And that is essentially a strategy session. I had to slow down on that word there. But again, that is a strategy session. You can connect with me. That again is on my screen, bit.ly/free 30-minute coaching, and connect with me there. Schedule a time with me. Would love to just kind of dive into what you got going on and see if we are a good fit to work with each other. I want to thank Marcia over on LinkedIn. And I didn't see if there was any people on there were just, there was just people watching over on Facebook. There are no YouTube comments, but I want to thank Marcia over on LinkedIn. Thank my wife, Lenora, for being part of the conversation. And for many of the other people who will watch replay, Blessing, I don't know how to say the last name there, but thank you, Blessing, for watching, and hello to you. And let's see here. I think that's all we got. And and also for those who will watch the replay, thank you for watching the replay. And if you have any questions or further comments about this conversation, please do make sure that you leave them in the comment section, either on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Would love to be able to answer those questions for you and just start up a conversation. And once again, reach out to me if you're so inclined to. From the link on the screen, that's bit.ly/free 30-minute coaching. I hope that this conversation has been enlightening for you. I hope this conversation has made a lot of sense to you, and to understand that things are more than just black and white, and unfortunately, because we don't see the underworkings, the current that's taking place underneath the soil, going through all the things that it needs to go through in order for that plant or those vegetables to come to the top soil, because we don't understand all the inner workings, the underworkings of it. Thank you, Marcia, for the conversation as well, and the wonderful comments, your engagement, good convo. So I appreciate that. Appreciate you, Marcia, for showing up. So a lot of times, because we don't understand the inner workings of something, we can watch on camera. I've seen some. What is it called? Some slow motion videos where they show a seed growing, and it's just quite interesting watching that. But essentially, that's how our words work. When we speak words, that's how they work. Words are seeds, and they definitely take place seemingly like in slow motion at times, and sometimes they show up almost immediately. And again, thank you all for being part of this show here. Again, we will say good night to you. We'll say ciao for now, and we'll see you later. Have a good night. Until next week, we'll see you next week. That Man Show, 7:00 p.m. Central Time, each Thursday, until we decide to say no more. So we'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Central Time, Thursday, for That Man Show. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.